Senator Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, is here. Senator, how are you, sir?
Hey, Mike. Good to be back on with you.
Yeah, good to talk to you. So what are you calling for in D.C.?
Well, Mike, what I'm calling for is the local authorities to restore law and order on the campus of George Washington University. Like in so many of campuses, you have these left-wing fanatics setting up encampments, celebrating Hamas, a foreign terrorist organization, interfering with students going to class, now interfering with students trying to take exams, Jewish students being threatened on campus. The authorities at GW actually asked the local D.C. police to come into campus. The police, of course, were ready to do so, the frontline officers. And then Muriel Bowser, the mayor, and her senior police leadership told them to stand down because it wouldn't be a good look to have police officers clearing out these criminal fanatics who are out there celebrating Hamas. I'm calling for the mayor to do her job, to restore law and order in the streets of her city, to make sure that Jewish students are not facing harassment and persecution in a nascent pogrom. And if she won't do it, Mike, it's just another example of why D.C. is not a state and should never be a state.
All right, let me play some devil's advocate here, Senator. Senator, what's the big deal? It's just some students setting up some tents. Who cares? Why you're making it a bigger deal than it is?
They're all violating the law because they've been told that they can't be present there. There are standing laws or regulations against their presence. They are also violating university rules and regulations on almost every one of these campuses by threatening and intimidating Jewish students. I've seen reports from Jewish students on campus saying that they can no longer study safely in the library or even in their dormitory. They're worried about not doing well in final exams, which are coming up. You've seen video probably on UCLA's campus of students wearing pro-Hamas headdress, physically blockading the doors to classrooms so Jewish students can't enter, just like Nazi brown shirts did in the 1930s. And meanwhile, the so-called adults on these campuses or local authorities like Muriel Bowser won't lift a finger to stop this, to actually restore law and order, to ensure that students have a safe and peaceful environment in which to attend classes and study for final exams, or take steps to rid their campuses of these anti-Semitic fanatics.
Well, they let these people in the universities in the first place as students.
These people, in many cases, run the universities. If you look at Columbia University's faculty out there locking arms to protect all of their pro-Hamas students.
Is this a little bit of a Breyer's rabbit, Senator? Maybe they want you to send in the National Guard because they think it'll help in their optics.
No, I mean, most normal Americans are decent people. They don't have a hard time distinguishing between the good guys and the bad guys in Israel, in the war between Israel and Hamas. And I think most Americans are shocked that the authorities are not going in there to clear out these encampments or pull students out who are trespassing in buildings. I mean, again, you can see that happening in places like University of Florida where they're not tolerating it. In fact, I don't think there's a single pro-Hamas encampment on any campus that has an SEC football championship banner hanging. You can't say that about some of America's most prestigious or so-called prestigious universities.
Yeah, but let's not insult the Columbia University football program, Senator. You know, come on, that's not fair. What about this argument, Senator? Maybe we should just let these campuses reap what they've sown. Columbia admits these students. They've hired these professors, as you mentioned. These students are literally saying, burn it down. Who cares? Let them burn it down.
So I can understand that point of view, and these universities in some cases are getting what they deserve, not just from having admitted all of these pro-Hamas left-wing Americans, or for that matter, taking in a bunch of foreign students because they'll pay full tuition who are sympathetic to Hamas. But we shouldn't forget that even when hundreds of these students are out in these encampments, there are thousands of students not there who are in the library, who are in the laboratory, who are in the classroom trying to do their work, trying to study to get good grades so they can graduate and go out and be productive citizens. And they deserve much better than what these university administrators and local Democratic politicians are doing.
Yeah. They're going to say, we know because they've already said it, but if what you want to do, Senator, You're militarizing. Here we are peacefully protesting, and you're militarizing the situation. You're just like the Israeli oppressors against the Palestinian people. You're treating us just the same way.
Well, first off, a lot of these pro-Hamas fanatics don't exactly look like they spend a lot of time in the gym. I'm not sure that it would need to be militarized if the local Democratic politicians would simply let the police forces do their job and to clear out these encampments. And if they would do their job to make sure that they don't have pro-Hamas lunatics on their campuses as well. But if in certain places you don't have enough police or the local Democratic politicians won't do their job, that's part of the reason why governors have a National Guard under their command. And I would remind all your listeners, Mike, that none other than Dwight D. Eisenhower, between his time as Supreme Allied Commander and President of the United States, was the president of Columbia University. What do we think Ike would have done if you had pro-Hamas militants intimidating Jewish students, refusing to let them go to class? We don't even have to speculate. It's exactly what he did in 1957 as president in my own state when you had racist Democratic politicians who refused to allow black students to go to Little Rock Central. He federalized the National Guard and made sure that they were there to protect those black students, not to prevent them from going to classes, which is what you have happening in places like UCLA today.
I made the mistake, Senator, a while back of thinking that what happened in the college campus bubble stayed in the bubble, and then they graduate and get smacked in the face with reality and wise up. Right? I thought that was true. You were a part of one of the most revealing moments in my political life when you wrote that editorial for the New York Times saying, call in the troops. And the New York Times, or the young people, especially at the New York Times, freaked out. it was like a college campus. They were running the New York Times now like it was a college campus. What lesson did you learn, and should we all have learned from that bizarre moment?
You're right, Mike, that what happens on these campuses, especially at so-called prestigious universities and colleges, doesn't stay on the campus, because those campuses are major opinion, trend, fashion, fad setters for the nation, and they are especially so at places like the New York Times. At a place like the University, you're going to have a lot of students graduate and go off and get good jobs at Walmart or Tyson or home building companies or local banks, go back to the family farms and so forth. But when you have a bunch of students graduating from Columbia and Yale and Oberlin going off to become 23-year-old social media editors for the New York Times, it does begin to resemble a college campus. And of course, that's why so much of left-wing discourse in this country is so polluted now, because it's been taken over by the kind of woke ideology that has prevailed on campus for years. It's how you get the demented moral compass that leads you to believe that Israel is the oppressors and Hamas is the oppressed.
Yeah. There's a question here about, what role does a U.S. senator have in all this? I mean, right now you're just calling for the National Guard to be sent, and you can't do it. I'm thinking of two things, though, that maybe the Senate does have a role in, and I'm concerned about these student visas. Like, it's already in the law that you can't be on a student visa, come here and praise Hamas. Like, that's already a thing. And then I'm concerned about the number one foreign funder of our universities, or donor to our universities, is Qatar, which is home of all the Hamas terrorist leaders. What role does the U.S. Senate perhaps have in these two things?
Well, first, to be precise, I'm only calling for the National Guard to be used if necessary, and I don't think it should be necessary. Campus police, and certainly campus police augmented by local police, should be more than enough if they're allowed to by Democratic politicians and college administrators to clear out these encampments and restore law and order for peaceful, law-abiding students. What more can the Senate do? Under Chuck Schumer, we may not be doing a lot, but under new management in January, for that matter, the House of Representatives right now, we can investigate a lot of the very matters you just raised, like who is funding these encampments. They're not sleeping out there under trash bags. They've got tents that cost hundreds of dollars. There are credible reports that money is coming from places like the Soros Foundation, like the Rockefeller Foundation, or perhaps even foreign militant funding as well. As you say, it's already the law that students can't come here on visas and celebrate Hamas, a foreign terrorist organization. Every one of these students on these campuses who are celebrating Hamas or celebrating Hezbollah should have their visa revoked and should be sent home immediately. And for that matter, at private universities, I would kick off private or students from private universities too who do that. They have no right. They have no First Amendment right against a private university like Columbia or Yale to celebrate Hamas. And students have had their offers of admissions revoked for much less grievous crimes, such as offending left-wing sensibilities in teenage social media posts. And the Department of Education, Department of Justice has a legal responsibility to protect the civil rights of all students on these campuses, to include Jewish students who are facing harassment and persecution. All these things are actions that the federal government should take. Now, if Joe Biden won't take it, Donald Trump and his new Attorney General and Secretary of Education, I bet will in January.
Look forward to that. Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
The letter that the senator wrote is on Breitbart.com. What do you think if you were in charge of the National Guard in your state? Would you call them to shut down the protesters, or just let the whole thing peter out on its own, or let it all burn?